Let's give it a second to catch up. And hello everyone watching on replay, and welcome to my mini seminar about how to get started with tarot. My name is Laurie E. Smith, my divination name is Ebonwing, and I have been working with tarot for nearly 7 years. Today, we will cover a pretty wide range of topics, so let's get started. First up, I'd like to dispel the widespread myth, and it really is widespread, that you need to receive your first deck as a gift, or that your first deck must be the Rider-Waite or the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. My first deck was a Rider-Waite-Smith, and to this day I cannot connect with him. Although Rider-Waite is a foundational deck, it is not the only suitable deck, nor is it the only type of tarot deck out there. There are two other primary types, the Thoth-style deck and the Marseille-style deck, which use very different iconography. So if you do not connect with Rider-Waite-Smith, please feel free to investigate the other two styles of deck, and one of those might be the answer for you. So in brief, the Rider-Waite style decks include illustrated minor arcana and avoid strong astrological or Kabbalistic associations. This is the most popular deck style in most English-speaking countries, so there is a lot of reference material out there to help you understand it. The Thoth deck, on the other hand, is rich with occult symbolism, has several major arcana cards which differ in meaning from the Rider-Waite-Smith, and it delves deep into astrological and Kabbalistic symbolism. The Marseille deck, which are the oldest style of deck, by the way, use pip cards in their minor arcana, which means that these cards are not represented by images that tell a story, but rather by simple illustrations representing the number of items in the suit. For example, the Five of Cups simply shows 5 cups. I would personally advise starting with a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck simply because there are so many choices out there, and most of the English instruction manuals deal with this deck style. But if Rider-Waite doesn't resonate with you, there is nothing wrong with investigating the Thoth and Marseille styles of decks. I'm going to show a page here. It's called the Labyrinthos website, and it has an excellent breakdown of the difference between the different types of decks. Just let me call that up for you. Give me one moment here to find the notation. There we are. And let me share screen with you. One moment here, there it is. And let me just optimize my screen. And you can see it there. This is the Labyrinthos site. And as you can see, it has a comparison between the different styles of decks. It gives a brief explanation of each one, and then it breaks it down into the name differences for the various suits, and also for the differences for the major arcana, which you can see there. And it is and they also talk about the suits and the court card ranks, which is very helpful information. So that is that. So yes, Labyrinthos, go there. It is simply Google types of tarot decks Rider Thoth, and that will bring you to the Labyrinthos site. Now, in terms of how to view the deck, like it seems like a really simple question, but what do you think decks actually are? There are several different perspectives on tarot cards and what they actually are. 3 of those perspectives can be summarized as follows. Number 1, it's just a pack of cardstock with no soul of its own, therefore it is completely an extension of you, the reader. Number 2, the deck is a channel between you and the divine or the spirit realm or wider energies in the world. So it's not really sentient, but it can transmit messages from sentient entities as well as non-sentient energies to you, the reader. And number 3, the deck is a sentient energy with its own, a sentient entity with its own energy and personality. Your personal experience may not be the personal experience of others. For example, to me, the decks are definitely sentient entities with their own energies, which will call to me when I see a deck that I can work with. It really does feel like a personal connection, like meeting someone for the first time and going, hey, I can be this person's friend. Also, the deck as an entity, in my version, has access to knowledge which I do not. For example, one time when the cards told me that a woman's husband was cheating on her, the woman's eyes got really big when I told her what the deck was saying, and she asked, "How did you know that?" And I replied, "I didn't know it, but the deck did." So yes, decks can have their own personality, at least for me. In a few cases where I have purchased decks that do not resonate with me on this very personal level, there's been a reason why I've purchased them. It's because I have a strong intuition that I could be the means by which that deck reaches someone who really does need it. For example, at the 79th World Science Fiction Convention back in December of 2021, one of the dealers who came to a party that I was hosting told me that one of his decks in stock had told him that it needed to be brought to that Worldcon, and that he had his own strong intuition that I was the person the deck was waiting for. So I went to his dealer's table the following morning, and I met the deck, which I will show you right now. It's the Wolf Song Cards deck. It's a beautiful deck, really nice, very rare. And I immediately realized that I did not resonate with this deck at all. But I did have a strong sense that it had come to me to use me as a conduit to its eventual proper owner. So I purchased the deck with the last of my convention mad money, and it is currently safely stored, waiting for the right person to come into my life and claim the deck. I may also, maybe I'll allow Pure Chance to have its way by putting the deck into a fundraising auction for one of our local animal charities. And when the time is right, I am confident I will know exactly what to do. I also have one deck which, although our relationship is somewhat antagonistic and was from the beginning, is very useful in certain types of readings. And that deck is the Morgan Greer Tarot, which many people use with great success, but I just can't seem to do it. But it's very helpful for representing negative energies in what's called an aspirational spread, which is one where I deliberately place chosen cards in certain positions to direct energy for my clients. And we'll talk more about that in another seminar. So we have digressed, but let us move on to picking a deck. How do you choose? There are thousands out there. Well, there are several places to start, and I'll start with a screen share. Oh, I see something in the chat. If this you first reading cards, you gave the first reading, then they came back and started to yell and shout at you, how did they deal with that? So basically what you're saying, Rhiannon, is that if I got a new deck of cards and at the first reading, they start yelling and shouting and being antagonistic, like what did I do? Is that your question? And I'll just wait for you to reply in the chat. Because if that's your question, there's a pretty clear answer to it. I'll proceed as if that was your question, because it's a good question. That is exactly what happened to me with the Morgan Greer. I picked it up. It was a secondhand deck in a local store, and I picked it up and I kind of held it, and I took out all the cards, of course, because with a used deck you want to count the cards to make sure they're all there. So I got that, and I kind of went, okay, this deck is definitely not for me, but I'm going to take it home and try it anyway. And I did. And the deck, like, of course, I immediately did like a 3-card spread to just kind of say, hey, deck, do you have anything to say to me? And the deck basically said, saw it off. So I put it aside for about a week and I came back to it. And I did an attunement where I held it to my heart and I, kind of breathed in and out to picture our energies mingling. And that didn't feel very good. So I went, okay, I did another 3-card spread. Hey, deck, what do you want to say to me today? Saw it off. So at that point, I went, okay, I'm going to put this deck aside and see if I can find another use for it. And it was you first time reading cards and they tell other people not to go for you for a reading. I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean by that. If you could clarify, that would be helpful. But so with the Morgan Greer, I sat with it for another week or so. And I figured I'm never going to pick this deck up again. I'm just going to end up giving it to someone else. Obviously, I am just meant to be the conduit by which it gets to the person that it's meant for. But then when I was doing an aspirational spread where I was placing negative energies on the table in the form of cards and then covering those negative energies with positive cards to neutralize the negative energy, this was the perfect deck for that because its entire energy for me feels negative. So it's perfect for negative card type of constructions like that. So that was what happened with me in the Morgan Greer. But coming back to the question of how do you choose a deck? Again, there are thousands out there. There are several places to start. And I was just going to show the, if I can just find it, of course. There it is. This is a site called Eclectic Tarot. And it basically has pretty much every single tarot deck that's been put out in the last 30 years. Here is their page for the Modern Witch Tarot. And you can see that they don't just have like a kind of a write-up about it. They also have reviews, and it allows you to look at sample cards from the deck. So it's as you can see, they have recently added decks. They have most popular searches. And also, when you search a deck, say you find a deck, you can also find out where to purchase it. And I believe at the bottom, oh, get a free tarot book, yay. And there's the review, one of the reviews. And you can also, it also gives you the complete details and things like that. And at the bottom, it gives you similar decks to it. It gives you similar themes and the category. This is very helpful if you're trying to choose a deck. And so I would highly recommend Eclectic Tarot as one of the first places you might go. The next good place to find decks is watch what people post on different Facebook groups, like Tarot, 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 or Tarot Learnings and Readings. People will often post their favorite decks, and one of those decks might resonate for you. A third way to do it is if you already know you like a certain creator style of decks, go to the website of your favorite deck creator and see what they have to offer. You might be very pleasantly surprised. If possible, do not just go by the box art, although that can be the spark that gets you moving. Try to find pictures online of the cards themselves to see if you feel that same energy connection with the cards. Now, I break that rule myself sometimes on occasion. Sometimes the subject matter of the deck alone is just enough to grab my attention. For example, this guy, the Grimalkin Tarot, the Beautiful Cat Tarot. It was announced and I knew immediately that this deck would be very powerful for me. The art style plus the subject of cats assured that. Similarly, this deck, the Tarot Muka, it was in the same, it was a new deck in the same shop where I bought the Morgan Guru's used deck, and I saw it on the wall behind the front desk, and it was like a beam of light shone out from the deck and hit me right in the heart, and just the connection was immediate. It was like catching someone's eyes across a crowded room and feeling an instant connection. Also, it's an obvious choice for me because Alphonse Mucha, whose art the deck is very roughly based on, is my all-time favorite artist. And then there's a new deck out called the Mystical Medleys, and I'm going to show you that one. Just let me get the proper window up here. I saw the box for this deck, and I went, holy Toledo, I've got to have it. And you'll see why in a sec when I show you. This deck is based on the animation of the 20s through the 40s. And this is one where I took one look at the cover image online and my heart went boom. I instantly knew this deck had to be mine. Again, in part because of the subject. As a commercial artist, I love the animation style, which this deck embodies in a clever and potent way. And then I saw some of the interior cards of the deck. I love that Nine of Swords. That Nine of Swords is killer. And my decision to get this deck was absolutely sealed. So those are some ways, but beware of counterfeits. Beware of counterfeits is immensely important. Whenever possible, order your deck from the publishing company that creates it or the creator themselves. It's really the only way to be sure. Counterfeit decks can suffer from poor cardstock quality, so they don't shuffle well or they start to come apart after use. Lousy printing, they might not have a guidebook with them, etc., etc., etc. And in some cases, the creator has placed a curse on all counterfeit decks and those who knock them off. So you probably don't want to get involved with anything like that if the deck creator has done that. So you've picked up your deck, you picked your deck, you got it, and it's in your hands. Now what do you do? To cleanse or not to cleanse? That's a big question. If you're going to cleanse a deck upon receiving it, there are different ways to do it. For example, you can use sunlight or moonlight. You can direct energy, physical contact, and sound. For example, moonlight or sunlight, as I mentioned, you can place your deck on the altar to draw your energy into it. You can put a crystal on top if you want to infuse it with the crystal's energy. Some people will, I'll just take this deck out to show you. Some people will knock on the deck. You can hold the deck to your heart. And as you breathe in, picture energy flowing into the deck to clear out any excess negative energy. Or you can ring a bell. If you can't light incense, for example, which some people also use for cleansing, use sound. Ring a bell, tap on something that makes a sweet sound for you, and hold it near the deck and picture the sound going through the deck and cleansing it. However, very important, I personally do not cleanse my decks. And that decision goes back to how I view each deck as an individual and sentient entity. I wouldn't cleanse a new deck any more than I do a mind wipe on somebody who I hope will become a close friend. I trust each of my decks to handle its own energy management, and I try to get to know each one on its own terms. Again, this is my personal viewpoint. If you hold a point of view on the decks which makes cleansing them advisable, of course you must do what makes the most sense for you. I will say that in my entire career, I've only had to cleanse one deck. On an occasion when I was doing an online reading and the client disappeared in the middle of the reading, just vanished. The energy dislocation was profound because I was right in the middle of the reading. And I felt the need at that time to gently cleanse my deck of the broken glass energy that I could just feel. Basically, I lit a stick of very mildly scented incense and I passed the whole deck through the mildly scented incense smoke. Afterwards, I put the deck aside for a day or two to give it some quiet time. Then I picked it up again, held it to my heart, while visualizing, breathing in through the deck, drawing its energy into me, and breathing out, gently guiding my energy into the deck to reestablish a connection and help to knit together any last remnants of brokenness. And the deck, which was then fully healed, worked perfectly well after that. I will say, fortunately, the client turned out to be all right. One of their kids had just gotten into something and they had to go and take care of it. But I was pretty deeply worried until they got back in touch with me. So you have your new deck. You've cleansed with it, you've cleansed it, you've attuned yourself. What do you do next? Well, what I would suggest is you take your deck, take it out of the box or the container, hold it in your hands, but first, quiet your mind, set up a space conducive to clear and sacred perception, which might include candles, incense, a special cloth on the table or altar to place the cards on, for example. Then look through the deck card by card right out of the box. Sit with each card for at least 10 seconds. So in this case, it's the death card, which of course is not a bad card, as people who do not know tarot sometimes think. Sit with each card for at least 10 seconds. Gaze at it, don't remove your gaze. And simply allow the imagery to impact your mind and sink into your consciousness and even deeper into your subconscious. And when you are done with one card, put it face down on the cloth and move to the next card. Don't worry about making any notes right now. You're just absorbing the overall shape of the deck as a whole. Now, once you've gone through the whole deck, pick up the cards and hold the deck close to your heart with the face of the cards towards your heart. Close your eyes and breathe slowly in and slowly out. Imagining your energy and the deck's energy flowing back and forth to form a connection. If at all possible, empty your mind of distracting thoughts and remember the card images you just saw in any way order that they may come to you. If one card or two or three cards keep coming back to your mind, remember to write them down after this heart attunement exercise, because these may be good cards to start with in the following exercise, which is making notes on each card. So we've done that. For making notes, I recommend using the Card a Day worksheet available through biddytarot.com. That's BIDDY tarot.com to get to know each card in depth. And I will show you a copy of one of my biddytarot.com worksheets. One moment while I find it. There it is. This is one of the biddytarot.com card a day activity worksheets. As you can see, it has today's card, the day you're reading it, your initial impressions of the card, where you just write down whatever comes to mind when you look at the card, keywords and phrases for you that come to mind. These can be drawn from your own intuition, but I think it's also good to put down ones that come from the book that comes with the deck. You see what's happening in the card with a picture. Symbols and images that stand out, pardon me. Excuse me. Dry throat. Symbols and images that stand out, what emotion is expressed, a greeting card message appropriate to the card, personal experience at the end of the day, and also things like events and situations, lessons learned, people, and new insights. I guarantee that if you do this with every card in your deck, and it's going to take you 2 or 3 months, but if you do this with every card in the deck, you are going to come to a much better understanding of each card. And they're going to be intuitive understandings. Now, other methods of deck attunement include sleeping with it under your pillow, putting it on your personal altar to absorb some of your energy, or simply looking through 5 or 10 cards a day. Again, concentrating on absorbing their image with a clear mind. Now, some people swear by performing a deck interview spread as the very first reading with their new deck, and I think that can be a good idea if your intuition tells you to try it. If you Google tarot deck interview online, you'll find lots of spreads. Please pick only 1 or 2 of those deck interview spreads. And if you pick 2 of them, be sure to pick spreads that approach the process in very different ways. So that takes care of that. Now we come to the question of to charge or not to charge your deck in terms of adding energy to it. Charging a deck is a bit like charging a battery. And again, this is something that I do not personally do, since I view my decks, again, as sentient entities who are fully capable of managing their own energy flow. But if you would like to try it, methods of charging often employ similar techniques to cleansing. For example, you can place your deck under moonlight or sunlight to cleanse it, to charge it. You can hold the deck to your heart. You can place it on your altar. You can place a crystal on top. You can use incense smoke. You can ring a bell to charge it, and so on. Now, storing your deck. Oh goodness, this is the subject of lively discussion. I store all my decks on a shelf close together or in a plastic carry box when I travel, because I like them to be near each other, since that, to me, encourages them to become attuned to each other and to work together on those occasions when I work with 2 decks at the same time. It does happen. Others swear by wrapping their decks in silk or using specially consecrated drawstring bags, while others keep them on their personal altar or seal them in a special chest. It really is entirely up to you, and if you feel that your deck is unhappy with the current arrangement, you could ask the deck, you could shuffle your deck and ask some yes or no questions to see how it would prefer to be stored. In that case, be sure your questions are clear. For example, would you like to be stored in a special chest? Yes or no. Would you like to be stored in a silk bag? Yes or no. And see which one gives the most positive answers. The next subject is getting started with readings. Big step, right? As noted, if it's your first time with your first deck, a deck interview spread might be a good very first spread to try out. After that, try reading with a single card in response to your own specific questions. And when you feel ready, or after a full moon phase has rolled around, whichever you feel is most appropriate, it may be time to try some 3-card pulls. And I'll show you some examples of those. 3-card pulls are a really good place to start. They're not terribly complex. They can be, let me just see here. Pardon me for a sec, folks. I just have to find the correct preview window here. I'm just going to have to reopen that because it appears that I did close it. Let me call this up. Oh, of course, it was part of the Biddy Card a Day preview window. That's why it's missing. Just give it a moment here, folks, for the window to open up in preview. And again, what we're talking about here are 1 to 3 card spreads. Now, if you do a single card pull, and I'll share the screen now, but I just have to get back into share screen again. There we go. And here we are. So beginner tarot spreads, 3 cards. You can do a single card pull, which gives you limited information, a single card plus a clarifier, the main card and the clarifier, which is 1 more level of information. But the 3 card pull gives you much more information. And here are some sample 3 card pulls. You can make these 3 cards mean anything you want. But if you're just starting out, I would suggest that you go with something like card number 1 is the past, card number 2 is the present, and card number 3 is the future. Or subconscious, conscious, and spiritual. Or root of problem, problem and solution. Or maybe forces working against you, your current situation, and forces working in your favor. So those are some examples of 3 card spreads. Very easy to do, not at all intimidating. I can't stress this one enough. But before I move to that, you should feel free to come up with different interpretations options of your own for the 3 card spread. See what, let your imagination run wild. And now we come to the point that I cannot stress enough. And this is all in capital letters like 46-point type. Do not pull 10 cards at a time. This is a major mistake that newcomers to tarot make. And the thinking is that 10 cards produce more information than 3 cards, which it does. But actually what it tends to do is breed chaos and uncertainty because the cards all generally need to be read in relation to each other and the various interpretation combinations become overwhelming. So if you're starting off, begin with 3 card spreads and become comfortable with those before moving on. Again, this may take 2 or 3 months or even longer because you're also doing the card a day interpretations, and the card a day exercises will feed into your ability to accurately interpret the cards in ways that make sense to you. But again, start off small. Start with 2 or 3 cards and then, move outward, move up to 4 or 5 and gradually increase your ability to read between the cards until you can handle 10 at a time. But please don't start with that because you'll just drive yourself a little bit bad. Finally, after becoming comfortable with the cards and with reading for yourself, don't be afraid to try reading for family and friends. This is a great way to accustom your deck to working with others as well as with you. So yes, do not be afraid to read for others. Even if at first it's just, hey, sis, can I do a test reading on you, and make sure you get feedback from your friends and family if they're willing and able to give it, because this will be absolutely invaluable to making you a better reader. Also important to note, while if you are just starting out, it's important to understand the guidebook interpretations for your new deck. So don't be afraid to look at the guidebook, but it's also important to recognize when your personal cards have a meaning that may be specific to you and your style of reading. And I will cover that in another seminar. So, okay, you've got your deck, you've done the card a day interpretations, you've done all this other stuff. What if this deck turns out to be not right for me? Oh my God, I think that's what some people are really afraid of, is they'll get a deck, they'll spend all this time with it. Hang on, folks, I just have to go off screen for a sec. And there's my adorable avatar, Wolliver Woof. And we're back. So again, you've got your deck, you've put all this work into it, and it pulls a Morgan Greer on you, right? As Rhiannon said, it starts yelling at you, it starts going sawed off, it starts just turning its back on you and doing this, and that's it. I have had this happen to me on one very memorable occasion that was not with the Morgan Greer, a deck I had worked with for years, but I put it aside due to physical illness and not having the time or energy. When I picked it back up again after several months, it was not happy and it refused to work with me. I tried to get back in touch with that deck for 8 weeks. And every single time I tried to connect with it, it was negative card, negative card, negative card. I was just doing 3 card spreads on it. And it was doing negative, negative, negative every single time. So there are ways to disconnect from a deck and get it out of your life. But we'll talk about that in another seminar, again, if folks are interested. Now we have a question from Rhiannon. So I should start with 1 or 3 cards. I would say, Rhiannon, if you're just starting out in tarot, start with a single card pull. Start reading for yourself using a single card and really understand what that card is saying. Like, get into the guidebook interpretation, look at the imagery on the card, see what the imagery says to you, and really concentrate on getting what that card has to tell you. And after a full moon cycle, or after, you know, a couple of months, you know, when you're feeling a little bit better about reading the single card, then go to 2 or 3 cards and try and read how they interact with each other. Because often the cards will read from left to right, but sometimes the center card will be the one you want to pay attention to, and the left and the right are just commentary on that central card. But that is something for another time. That's today's mini seminar on how to get started with tarot. If you have any further questions, please drop them in the chat, Rhiannon. I will wait a minute or two because Zoom can lag. And then if there are no other questions, I'll wrap up the feed. In the meantime, I will show you some of my other favorite decks. I've already showed you the beautiful Grimalkin Tarot in its lovely box. Where can I buy tarot cards and prices for cards? I will come up to that in a second, Rhiannon. This was the Tarot Muka, and that's the Fool card. It's a beautiful, beautiful deck. It's more actually a Tarot Muka Arthur Rackham. It's more of an Alphonse Muka Arthur Rackham fusion deck than actually a Muka deck. Another one of my favorite decks is the very quirky but very powerful Spencer's Tarot. This deck, that by the way is the Knight of Swords, the Barbarian. This deck is actually based on mythology and Halloween symbolism, and it doesn't come with a guidebook. I actually had to create a guidebook to go with it, and that took a number of months. And I also have my Crow Tarot. This was another deck because crows are one of my spiritual associates. I immediately had to get it. And this is a deck called the Santa Muerte Tarot, which is based on Mexican iconography. And I first picked it up, and it was a used deck. So I picked it up and I went through it, and I kind of went, not really for me. But over the next 3 days, the images just stuck in my head, and I had to go back and get it. It's an incredibly powerful deck. It is not standard Rider-Waite-Smith iconography. It's kind of at a 90-degree angle, but it is a very good deck, very powerful. Just looking at the question, where can I buy tarot cards and prices for cards? Oh my goodness. You can get a lot on Amazon, There's a company, I believe, called Hay, H-A-Y, which also sells decks, but I have heard that they can sell counterfeits. So my personal advice would be to go to a site like Eclectic Tarot, just kind of look through it. If any of the decks really speak to you, look at the purchasing information that is on the Eclectic Tarot site, because they, from what I have heard, tend to go with ethical and viable sellers. So you don't have to worry as much there about it going to counterfeit. If you really want to avoid counterfeits, go to the creator site or go to the publisher site. For example, Tarot Muka is produced by a company called Lo Scarabeo. So if I was to order anything, for example, they do have an Arthur Rackham deck. If I wanted to buy that, I would actually go to Lo Scarabeo itself. I would actually get in touch with them because they actually do have a website, and I would probably order from there. So in terms of price, the Spencer Tarot, which is a novelty deck, which comes with no guidebook at all, was around $12 Canadian. And that is muy cheap, very cheap. The Grimalkin Tarot in its beautiful tin box, limited edition, I believe was $60-something. But again, limited edition, right? Small print run, limited edition, the prices tend to be higher. I would say the Mystical Medleys one I saw, the 1940 style animation, is going for about, with shipping, $38 Canadian from the manufacturer side. So it can be anywhere. I would say that the Spencer's Tarot is very much an outlier because it doesn't come with a guidebook. It's super cheap. You're probably looking at anywhere between $24 and $70 a deck. But if it's the right deck for you, it's worth it. If it's the right deck for you, save up your pennies, get the one that resonates with you and makes your heart sing. That is the most important thing. Because if you go with a deck that is only second best, the chances are pretty good that you'll end up not using it very much. So you'll have wasted the money. And, it's just not fair to yourself. Find a deck that you love. And if it's expensive, save up for it, but get that deck. That's vitally important. So did you have any other questions, Rihanna? I'll just give a moment to catch up. I'm just trying to think here. Yeah, I really don't have that many decks compared to a lot of people. I also have several decks which I am not showing today because I was gifted to them they were gifted to me. I have 2 tarot patrons, bless you, my tarot patrons, who buy me decks that resonate with me. And I have at least 2 decks set aside right now where I am not quite ready to embark on them yet. I like to become very familiar with 3 or 4 decks at a time. Oh, anywhere in Winnipeg to buy tarot cards, Rhiannon has asked. Yes, very much yes. The Elemental Witchery, I think is what it's called, on Henderson Highway, around 220 Henderson Highway, does sell lots of tarot cards. I personally get my cards from Radiance, which is on Corydon Avenue near Lilac Street, I think in around the 800 block. And that's where I go to get most of my cards. I ordered the Grimalkin Tarot from MJ Coulinet. You can see her name on there. She is the creator. MJ Coulinet's website. So I got them from there. And the Crow Tarot was picked up for me by a friend when she was in New Orleans, and love it to pieces. Elemental and Radiance do carry a wide selection. Some of the big box bookstores, I think Chapters has a tarot section, and also McNally Robinson has a tarot section. But I was at McNally Robinson's in December and looking over their tarot section, and no, actually it wasn't in December, it was before that. But anyway, I was looking in their tarot section. It's not a very big section. So you might, if you have a deck in mind, you might be better off to actually phone around and see who has it. If you just want to browse, I would recommend Radiance and Elemental, because those will give you a nice wide selection, to kind of look over. And again, be alert for that moment when you look at a deck and it just calls to you. And it just says, you have to be, you are mine and I am yours. You must have me. And listen to that call. That's vitally important. Any more questions, Rihanna? And thank you, by the way, for the questions you have posed. I'll be right back, folks. There we go. So I'll just give a moment in case Rhiannon has any other questions. If anyone watching this on replay has questions, you can put your questions into the comment section, because I plan to put this up on YouTube. And I will do my best to answer those questions as they come up and as I access YouTube. I'm just trying to think, I will say that Biddy Tarot, as I mentioned, Biddy, B-I-D-D-Y, Tarot, T-A-R-O-T.com, not only has that lovely free card a day worksheet, she also runs seminars regularly, which are free and which are geared toward people just beginning in tarot. I would highly recommend Biddy Tarot, little plug, because I've watched their beginner tarot seminars just to kind of rate them. And yeah, she's got hers, and she has good, solid information. She conveys it well. People are going to understand her very easily. And I think that if you're starting in tarot, she is an excellent place to begin. You don't have to buy any of her paid material. She does do the free workshops. But if you really want to get ahead fast, she seems to know her stuff. You might want to sign up for a year and just, go with her horses. Okay, it looks like there are no more questions. In that case, I'd like to thank you, Rhiannon, for joining me today. I know it was short notice. I expected to get nobody, so thank you for joining me. Thank you to everyone watching this. Again, I'm Laurie E. Smith. My divination name is Ebonwing. If you search Ebonwing on Facebook, you will find my page, which is Ebonwing Divination, and my group, which is Ebonwing Tarot Talk and Divination Discussion. Please feel free to join them both. And I will be posting interesting material on those 2 sources. And that is it for today. I would so much like to thank everybody. I hope you found this mini seminar helpful, and I hope to hold another one sometime soon. So in the meantime, folks, take care, stay safe, and I hope you have an awesome week ahead. See you later.